Well, friends, what now? Let's talk about that. Because still, and perhaps now more than ever, justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, let's start with a headline. A headline that seems to sum things up pretty accurately. This from Rolling Stone. America elects convicted felon to be president. Donald Trump easily defeated Kamala Harris to win a second term, which promises to be a more nakedly authoritarian continuation of his first. So friends, let's be honest. There are no obvious or easy answers to the question, what happens now? What happens to American democracy? What happens to our republic? Will we keep it? There are no clear answers. There are some questions. For example, will President Joe Biden use his core constitutional powers as set out by the Supreme Court in their presidential immunity ruling? Will he use any of those core constitutional powers to try to protect and preserve our democracy? Will the 14th Amendment's disqualification clause of an insurrectionist from ever holding office again, will that make an appearance? Remember that Section 3 of the 14th Amendment says, in plain, straightforward, unambiguous terms, that anybody who takes an oath to support and defend the Constitution, who thereafter engages in insurrection or gives aid and comfort to insurrectionists, is disqualified from ever holding office again, unless both houses of Congress, by a 2/3 vote to remove the disqualification. An insurrectionist is disqualified from holding office. And remember, friends, Donald Trump is an adjudicated insurrectionist by both a state trial court and a state Supreme Court. Now, I acknowledge the United States Supreme Court, when it took up the issue, said, well, that doesn't mean a state can disqualify him from having his name on a presidential primary ballot. Fair enough, that's not what the 14th Amendment says. It says he can't hold office, not that he can't have his name appear on a primary ballot. So that is still an open question, an unanswered question. Is he disqualified under the express language, the very words of the Constitution? The answer should be yes. So it follows that Congress should have to take a vote. And if 2/3 of both houses of Congress, the House and the Senate, vote to remove the disqualification, well, then he can be sworn in. That's another open question. And what about this? Let's assume he's sworn in, because I'm not pretending any of these vehicles will actually rise up to save democracy. I hope we talk about them. I hope they may rise up to save democracy, but assuming they don't, will Donald Trump use his position as president in the transactional way that he uses everything in his life, and perhaps enter into a quid pro quo bargain with Vice President Vance, whereby Vance will pardon him and Donald Trump, a la Richard Nixon, will resign from the presidency and will slouch off toward Mar-a-Lago for the rest of his days. Again, none of these questions can be answered at the moment, but I think the only thing that is certain is the uncertainty that we are all feeling right now regarding the future of our democracy when a majority of the American voters just elected a day one dictator. And friends, day one dictator isn't something I made up. That's not my assessment. Donald Trump said he will be a dictator on day one. Now, for the sake of completeness, he said, well, only on day one. Okay, to which I would ask, how many dictators who come into absolute dictatorial power voluntarily relinquish that power on day two? So, together with saying he'll be a dictator on day one, Donald Trump has said he will terminate portions of the Constitution. Donald Trump said he will use the military against what he calls the enemy from within, and he repeatedly qualified what he meant by that: his political opponents. So, yes, friends, I am disgusted, I am disheartened, and yes, I am surprised that a majority of the American voters threw their lot in with an avowed day one dictator. I thought better of the American people. You know, the people who voted for Donald Trump ought to know that now that he has their vote, he will have no further need for them. And speaking of people that a dictator, Donald Trump, will have no need for, you know what a dictator has absolutely no need for? Co-equal branches of government, like the legislative branch or the judicial branch. Hey, Congress, if you're listening, do you think Donald Trump, if he becomes the dictator he has promised to become, will have any use for you, representatives, senators, as a co-equal player to him? And how about the judiciary? I mean, do those 6 radical right-wing judges really believe that if they hand down some ruling that displeases dear leader, you don't think Donald Trump will retaliate? I mean, do these judges really believe they are immune from Donald Trump's wrath? So friends, we're going to have a lot to talk about in the coming days and weeks and months regarding this fight, this struggle for the health, indeed for the viability of American democracy. And you know, I really do hope there is some truth in the old saying, it's always darkest before the dawn, because darkness has descended on American democracy. But as Kamala Harris just said in her concession speech, this is not the time to throw up our hands. It's the time to roll up our sleeves. And friends, I'd like to finish with my favorite quote from President Abraham Lincoln. He knew a little something about fighting for the Union, fighting for the Republic, fighting for American democracy. President Lincoln said, "Be sure you put your feet in the right place, then stand firm." Our feet are in the right place, and we will stand firm. Because justice matters. Friends, please hang in there. Please stay safe. Please stay tuned. And I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.